Out there, past the last breath of sunlight, past the thinning whisper of the solar wind, a small machine built by human hands continues drifting through the dark. It's been 47 years since it left Earth, longer than most people alive today have been breathing. It carries less computing power than a digital watch. Its transmitter is weaker than a household light bulb. And yet, Voyager 1 has reached farther than any creation in human history. It has crossed boundaries no telescope can see. It has outlived its own designers. It has become humanity's most distant ambassador. And now, it has done something no one expected. It turned back. For reasons no one at NASA can fully explain, Voyager 1, more than 22 billion kilometers from Earth, adjusted its orientation toward the very system it once left behind. The movement was small, barely half a degree, but it was deliberate. It required a command to its attitude thrusters, a command that no human sent. And shortly after that uncommanded turn, the data arriving across the deep space network changed. It became structured, rhythmic. Impossible to understand why this moment matters. You have to step back to 1977, when Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 were launched into the sky to take advantage of a rare planetary alignment. Built in the age of rotary phones and typewriters, the probes were engineered to survive a few years, enough to visit Jupiter and Saturn, nothing more. Yet somehow, they kept going. They pushed past the gas giants, past the Kuiper Belt, past everything we once thought of as the edge of our world. As their cameras shut down, their fuel dwindled, and their instruments aged, the probes continued onward into a region no spacecraft had ever entered. Voyager 1 reached the heliopause first, the invisible frontier where the sun's influence ends and interstellar space begins. But when it crossed that boundary, things didn't behave as they should. The magnetic field didn't rotate the way models predicted. The plasma density spiked violently, but the field direction stayed the same, as though the probe hadn't left the sun's realm at all, and had instead passed into a mirrored version of it. Scientists called it strange, but they didn't have an explanation. Then, 6 years later, Voyager 2 crossed the same boundary and detected the same impossible conditions: identical magnetic alignment, identical density spikes, identical failure of expected transition. Two spacecraft on two different paths, entering supposedly open interstellar space, years apart, and both found themselves in a region that didn't behave like interstellar space at all. It behaved like a barrier, a wall, something pressing back. Years passed, and Voyager 1 kept sending faint whispers of data from the darkness. Then, in late 2024, its steady stream of cosmic ray measurements began showing rhythmic spikes, small, precise bursts every 11 minutes. At first, NASA dismissed them as noise caused by radiation. But noise doesn't keep perfect time. Noise doesn't sync itself to plasma waves. Noise doesn't build. And here, the spikes rose in exact correlation with the background plasma oscillations. Something was happening around Voyager 1, and it was growing stronger. Then came the moment that forced everyone to pay attention. The probe's antenna, which had remained fixed for over a decade, shifted. Not by accident, not due to tumbling or gyroscopic drift. It turned. It aimed itself toward a region of magnetic flux it had been detecting for months. And when it pointed in that direction, the rhythmic spikes merged into a single continuous tone, a steady, low-frequency signal oscillating just below the threshold of human hearing. No one at NASA wanted to believe what the waveform revealed when decoded. The ratio hidden inside the tone matched the fundamental frequencies of the hydrogen atom, the same mathematical constant humanity used when encoding the golden record aboard the spacecraft hydrogen, the universal marker of intelligent communication. Something out there was responding in the only language we dared to send. The revelation split the scientific community. Some argued it was coincidence, a trick of plasma resonance shaping itself into familiar patterns. But others believed something far more profound was happening. Voyager 1 wasn't receiving a field. It was hearing. And what it was hearing sounded like its own transmission, inverted and returned through a medium the probe shouldn't have been able to detect. The simplest explanation, that the probe's signal was bouncing off an unseen boundary, raised a terrifying possibility. What if the heliopause wasn't an exit into open space, but a reflective membrane surrounding the solar system? A mirror at the edge of the sun's influence. For 3 weeks, the reflected pattern grew stronger. Then, abruptly, it vanished. When engineers examined the final frames of data, they found one more anomaly hiding in the noise, a faint voltage fluctuation across the magnetometer. It wasn't random. It was a binary sequence, and when decoded, the pattern matched the time code of the first track on the golden record. Greetings from Earth! It was as if someone or something had played it back. What followed changed the tone inside JPL from curiosity to fear. Through heavy noise reduction and machine learning reconstruction, NASA's analysts converted the final waveform into a three-dimensional spectrogram. It wasn't chaos, it was structure, 6 repeating peaks forming a perfect hexagonal lattice, a crystalline resonance like those produced in magnetized plasma chambers. Nothing natural behaves that way in deep space. The implication was staggering. Voyager had encountered a structured boundary, a membrane capable of reflecting and shaping electromagnetic energy. Within days, the phenomenon was confirmed by other observatories. ESA, ISRO, and private networks like Square Kilometer Array South all registered the same signals, mirrored pings arriving exactly 19 hours after each Voyager transmission. 19 hours, the precise radio travel time between Voyager 1 and a point located 22 billion kilometers away on the other side of the heliopause. Whatever reflected the signals wasn't random. It was consistent, it was deliberate, and it was now listening. This was only the beginning, and as Voyager kept transmitting, the boundary began to answer back. Once the mirrored signal appeared across multiple observatories, NASA had no choice but to treat the phenomenon as real. Voyager 1 was no longer alone in the dark. Something, somewhere near the boundary of the heliosphere, was returning its transmissions. And the responses weren't weak, they grew stronger with every cycle. But the shock deepened when Voyager 2, billions of kilometers away on a completely different trajectory, began picking up the same reflected rhythm. 2 spacecraft separated by the size of the solar system, both receiving identical mirrored signatures synchronized down to the second. There was no explanation in known physics for synchronized reflections across that distance, unless the reflections weren't coming from Voyager at all, but from a single structure large enough to encompass both points in space. NASA attempted to decode the strange mirrored frequency, hoping it was just an artifact of plasma interference. But as the data accumulated, the signal revealed something far more structured. The peaks in the waveform, when plotted over time, formed geometry, an expanding spiral intersected by straight radial lines, like a map viewed from above. When analysts cross-referenced the intersections with star catalogs, the points aligned with a chain of local interstellar clouds, forming a narrow corridor pointed toward the constellation Ophiuchus. But the map wasn't pointing outward. Layer by layer, each 80-hour transmission cycle folded the pattern inward, converging toward the sun's position as though charting the solar system itself. The signal wasn't trying to show us where something was going. It was showing us where something already was. When NASA converted the numerical ratios into audio, the resulting tone was haunting. A low-frequency hum oscillating at 115 Hz, the same pitch used on the golden record to represent the hydrogen atom's fundamental frequency. It was as if the sender was deliberately speaking in the same mathematical language we chose for our message to the stars. Then came an event that pushed the situation from strange to unthinkable. On February 4th, 2025, at exactly 2:43 UTC, Voyager 1 executed a correction maneuver that no one had authorized. Its orientation sensors triggered an automatic thruster burst, one that consumed precious remaining fuel, to rotate the spacecraft 7 degrees. Instead of pointing toward Earth, the probe aligned its high-gain antenna directly toward the coordinates indicated by the geometric pattern. It was as if Voyager had recognized the map and attempted to reply. For 11 minutes, the spacecraft transmitted a high-power signal straight into the darkness, draining significant energy reserves. Every radio dish in NASA's deep space network registered a sharp voltage dip as Voyager pushed out a burst far stronger than typical housekeeping transmissions. But what came back wasn't radio. The response arrived as a gravitational fluctuation, a ripple in space-time detected simultaneously by the LIGO observatories on Earth. For the first time in history, a human-made machine had sent a message across interstellar space, and something had replied with gravity. Models broke instantly. Gravitational waves are produced by catastrophic events like colliding black holes, not by communication. Yet the wave that returned wasn't chaotic. It had rhythm, a pattern, a structure. When the waveform was reconstructed using three-dimensional Fourier analysis, the shape that emerged was astonishing. A toroidal lattice, like a ring of energy twisting inward on itself. Embedded in the pattern were coordinates that pointed directly to Voyager 1's position. And for one impossible moment, the gravitational wave's frequency overlapped perfectly with the golden record's base hydrogen tone. It was as if the universe had played back our message in a new medium. Panic rippled through JPL's back rooms. Not the public panic of sensational headlines, but the quiet kind, the kind that spreads through people who understand exactly what they're looking at. To some, it meant Voyager had reached the event horizon of an artificial construct, a gravitational shell surrounding the heliosphere, a boundary not built to trap us, but to contain something else. Whatever it was, the probe had touched it, and it had answered. NASA's response was immediate. The deep space frequency bands carrying the data were encrypted and rerouted. Public updates became vague statements about telemetry issues and signal corruption. Internally, however, engineers were still processing the final packets Voyager 1 sent before silence fell. Those packets were dense, far denser than anything Voyager's decades-old hardware should be capable of producing. Inside the compressed data were plasma measurements encoded with a repeating 6-digit sequence, 1011011, a pulse repeating every 11 minutes. The same rhythm Voyager detected before it turned back. But now, the source wasn't beyond the heliopause. It was behind the probe, inside the heliosphere, like something had slipped through the barrier and was following it. That was when the Deep Space Network captured the most unsettling event yet. A second signal, not from Voyager 1, not from Earth, but from somewhere between them. It was a perfect mirror of Voyager's transmission, stronger, cleaner, almost as if it were an upgraded version of the signal Voyager itself would send. For 19 minutes, the mystery transmission duplicated every bit of Voyager's outgoing data in real time, matching down to the smallest fluctuations. It was as though a second, invisible spacecraft were shadowing Voyager 1, echoing everything it sent with impossible precision. And then, just as suddenly as it began, the reflection ended. The signal dissolved into static. The data froze. What remained on the carrier wave was a faint oscillation, not radio, not gravitational, but a modulation of hydrogen's natural frequency. The same frequency used on the golden record, the same frequency used in the harmonic reflections, the same frequency Voyager had detected before its unexplained turn. The message was clear to those who understood the mathematics. Hydrogen, the alphabet of the cosmos, the language of intelligent life. But in this case, the hydrogen tone didn't originate from Voyager or Earth. It came from the void between them, as if something was speaking using the most fundamental building block in the universe. NASA's physicists reached a conclusion they were terrified to write down. Voyager had not found the edge of the solar system. It had reached the point where space folds back on itself, a mirror field, an artificial boundary where electromagnetic waves curve and return, a barrier that watches what crosses it. Voyager didn't find the end of the sun's influence. It found a structure vast enough to reflect light, radio, magnetism, and gravity, and hidden in the smallest harmonics of the returning wave was a timestamp, a countdown measured in seconds. When decoded, it aligned with the year 2031. Something out there wasn't approaching. It was calibrating. Voyager 1 had reached out into the darkness, and the darkness had reached back Voyager. One had been drifting in silence for weeks when the final anomaly occurred. Its transmissions had become thin and sporadic, like a voice losing strength at the edge of hearing. Engineers assumed the aging probe was finally failing after nearly half a century in the void. But then, without warning, the signal surged. Not gradually, not in random bursts, instantly. A sharp spike in carrier strength flooded into the deep space network, saturating receivers across 3 continents. It was the strongest signal Voyager had emitted since the early 1980s, stronger even than when its systems were young and full of power. But the spike wasn't coming from Voyager. It was coming from the space around it. The moment analysts ran the waveform through a decompression filter, the truth became clear. Embedded inside the spike was the same pattern Voyager had been receiving for months. The structured 6-peak lattice encoded in the reflected waves, the geometry that matched neither plasma nor cosmic background radiation. Except now, the lattice wasn't faint. It wasn't buried in noise. It was perfect, every line crisp, every harmonic ratio mathematically exact. A signature repeated 24 times in under 3 minutes, each repetition slightly rotated like a 3-dimensional object being turned slowly toward us. It was not a natural phenomenon. While the team debated how such a clean structure could emerge from a dying spacecraft, something even more unsettling happened. The echo that usually returned after 19 hours began coming back faster. First, an hour earlier than expected, then 3 hours, then 6. By the 4th cycle, the reflection arrived almost immediately after Voyager's outgoing signal, as if the mirror surface that had once been billions of kilometers away was collapsing inward. The boundary was moving. The reflective structure was approaching Voyager 1, folding space in a way our physics could barely describe. And LIGO confirmed it. Faint gravitational ripples coinciding with each early return, like footsteps marching closer in the dark. The Deep Space Network went into emergency protocol. Encryption layers were applied. Public data streams were cut, but it didn't matter, because the final packets Voyager sent before the collapse carried something no encryption could hide. A burst of compressed digits that formed a complete sequence, the same repeating binary pattern embedded in the earlier anomalies. Except this time, the numbers extended far longer, hundreds of digits repeating in a cycle, forming a spiraling helix when plotted on 3 axes. When converted through the same AI-assisted spectrogram used to decode the Golden Record's analog signals, the binary revealed structured interference, like 2 waveforms overlapping, one from Voyager and one from something else adjusting its answer. Each cycle grew more aligned, more synchronized, until finally they merged into a single stable resonance. That resonance, once filtered, produced a pattern of pulses, and those pulses formed a time code. The countdown wasn't metaphorical, it was literal. A counter ticking toward an exact moment in the year 2031. Inside NASA, an unspoken question spread like a shadow as the countdown indicating when something would reach the heliopause, or when something would arrive at Voyager's position. Or was it predicting a moment when the boundary itself would change its state? No one knew. But the deeper the analysis went, the more one terrifying realization emerged. The boundary was not a wall, it was a sensor, a membrane designed not to keep us out, but to monitor what moved inside it, a detection surface, a cosmic perimeter alarm. For decades, we believed Voyager 1 had left the solar system. But what if it had only reached the edge of a contained region, one with rules, limits, and watchers? And now, after nearly 50 years, Voyager had done something that triggered a response. It had bounced a signal off the membrane. It had made noise. It had announced its presence. And something on the other side had answered. In the final hour before the probe's collapse into silence, Voyager's instruments registered one last anomaly, a faint rise in particle density. Not ahead of it, but behind it, as though something massive, planet-sized massive, was approaching from the direction of interstellar space, compressing particles as it moved. The readings climbed slowly, then sharply, then abruptly flatlined. Not because the anomaly disappeared, but because Voyager did. The signal died. 1 second it was transmitting. The next second it was gone. No fade out, no degradation, no interference. A perfect stop. Within minutes, the Deep Space Network went into full lockdown. All public pages listed telemetry corruption. Internal documents reported loss of carrier lock, but operators in the control room described something else. The stomach-dropping feeling of watching a machine vanish without warning, as if swallowed by the void. The final raw voltage spike suggested something had passed between Voyager and Earth, like a shadow crossing a beam of light. Just hours later, telescopes across the world detected a low-frequency hydrogen modulation echoing faintly across the heliosphere. The same frequency Voyager had used, the same frequency the mirror structure had returned. But now the signal wasn't coming from beyond the heliopause. It was originating closer, somewhere inside the solar system, moving slowly toward the inner planets. Whatever Voyager had touched, whatever had answered, whatever had crossed the membrane was now on our side of it. For weeks, the echo persisted, drifting closer, cycling through the same hydrogen tone, the same rhythmic pulse, the same geometry encoded in the interference lattice. Scientists described it as a presence, not a craft, not an object, not a transmission, a presence. Something shaped by intelligence, but not necessarily technology as we understand it. Something that manipulated gravity the way we manipulate electricity. Something that reflected signals the way eyes reflect light. And then, As suddenly as it began, the echo stopped. Not because the source faded, but because something else drowned it out. A sharp spike of gravitational noise recorded by LIGO, Virgo, and Cagra simultaneously. A spike that matched the exact signature Voyager received in reverse months earlier. Except this time, the spike ended with a shape encoded in the waveform. Not a lattice, not a spiral. A simple, unmistakable symbol. A circle, followed by a line, markers for arrival, markers for interception, markers for coordinates. NASA's internal briefing concluded with a sentence no one expected to read. "We recommend preparing for an event at the predicted timestamp." The countdown continues. Voyager woke something at the edge of the solar system. And now, whatever that something is, it's coming.